Hello, this is Druidsfire. I'm here with my overview of PAX East 2024. Now, there is no question that the pandemic changed the world. 4 years ago, PAX East 2020 wound up being pretty much the last big nerdy convention for almost 2 years, when new events slowly trickled back from their online versions that were scrambled together in 2021, and then some still in 2022. It was understood that the first in-person events would not be as grand as pre-pandemic events, as many people chose and still continue to choose not to return so quickly due to masking concerns, and events that previously sold out in seconds, such as BlizzCon, would wind up in November of 2023 having tickets available even as the show was about to start. As I did my first wander of the show floor at this year's PAX East during the press and media hour, it was still a bit shocking just how diminished it was, simply judging by how empty it was in the Boston Convention and Exhibition Center. One other change was that, despite the pandemic, PAX no longer required masking of its attendees. Its first year back after the pandemic began, it required masking inside the convention center except during eating or drinking, and by and large, the gamers followed that rule with surprising scrupulousness. This year, however, I observed masks on only perhaps a tenth of the attendees and hardly any of the convention center staff, including the food service associates. PAX itself was already in sort of a lull in 2020 when certain big brands such as Blizzard or Microsoft didn't have booths. The 2022 show was definitely smaller, as expected, but I was shocked at how this trend continued for the 2024 show. There were a few big names in residence, such as Square Enix promoting the Dawn Trail expansion for Final Fantasy XIV, insert critically acclaimed memes here, Nintendo with 2 booths mostly promoting Pokemon, Larian promoting Baldur's Gate 3, where even their Mind Flayer friend was wearing something a little bit more sexy, compared to the full robes of the previous years, which you can see in this photo show. Grinding Gear Games was there promoting Path of Exile, aka Diablo with spreadsheets, and the possibly controversial Kydia Gaming out of Saudi Arabia having what might have been the flashiest booth on the floor, but also one of the most busy. On the flip side, however, there was a lot of empty space on the show floor, even in prime real estate close to the main entrance that would have had a ton of foot traffic in previous years. The biggest empty space in the best location could have housed 2 medium booths, or 1 large booth, and it was just going spare. It could be because the PAX was the same week as GDC, which has been a thing for a few years now, though that show is more for developers, whereas PAX is more for the public. It could be that in this era of sadly frequent layoffs in the industry, fewer companies are interested in the expense of a booth at PAX, or even paying for their staff to attend. Maybe someone canceled, even as Nintendo was a late addition to the floor just a few days before the show. In general terms, this year's PAX was probably about 2/3 the size of the 2022 show, and maybe only half the size of the 2020 show. I think I found one of the oddest trends from this year's PAX was the rise of the food brands with booths or a food truck on the show floor. Now, there'd always been a few food trucks outside the convention space and also inside for things like funnel cakes or rice bowls or handcrafted soda, but this was the first year that Idahoan Instant Potatoes had a rather large booth toward the tabletop gaming section in the show floor toward the back, where they were selling some handheld potato snacks, and they were giving away free single-serving cups of their potatoes, which I patronize that brand even before this video. I didn't even stop at their booth other than take photos. But they had this quirky photo op booth that's shaped like a baked potato. It was cute. And gamers, of course, pun intended, ate it up. The other big food brand, a Boston local Dunkin' Donuts, more popularly known as just Dunkin' these days, they went even further in that their booth had an actual game in the middle of the prime gaming real estate. Their booth was in the middle of where all the other gaming companies were. And it was like an interactive game where players could toss little foam balls at a screen and rack up points. The game was called Dunkin' Invaders. Of course, a riff on Space Invaders from the old ancient arcade and retro gaming days. And so you throw a ball at the screen, rack up some points if you hit the targets on it. And interestingly enough, they were also giving away a ton of gift cards for like $5 for free coffee. Bad. They were just handing them out like, here. They literally made it rain coffee or something. I don't know. Figuratively. However, there were some other bright notes as well. The smaller number of booths on the show floor meant that a lot more space was available for attendees to wander around and not feel like they were compressed into a sardine can like in pre-pandemic times. Some companies, like one of the companies that I patronized last year, they actually were able to migrate up to a larger booth this year, so they were absolutely doing much better for themselves. There were still a ton of panels being hosted in the animal-themed theaters like Condor, Dragonfly, Bobcat, though they're still a far cry from the 2014 show when Blizzard did their first public announcement of Hearthstone in the Condor Theater. I was there, and I typoed on my tweet about it. I still remember that 10 years later. Now, while they didn't do a booth on the show floor, Daybreak Games spent probably the most time on events, at least on Thursday. Their Dark Paw Game Studio did a panel on the 25th anniversary of EverQuest, and their local to Boston Standing Stone Games Studio did a panel on how to make monsters in Dungeons & Dragons Online. On top of that, Daybreak hosted a player meetup nearby that evening, featuring developers from both EverQuests, Dungeons & Dragons Online, and the Lord of the Rings Online, the latter also being developed by Standing Stone Games. Overall, while this video discusses how much smaller PAX East was compared to the pre-pandemic era, I personally like the fact that I could move around between booths, that there was a lot of seating for people on the show floor off to the sides, even if they took out the seating in the food court upstairs. However, it was still a net positive in terms of seating. The absence of most of the largest companies from previous years meant that the indie-level developers really had an opportunity to shine. The lines for the booths for even the biggest names weren't all that bad compared to previous years, and that's of course partly to do with the fact that the show only sold out its Saturday tickets. 4-day, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday tickets were available even as the weekend progressed. I haven't seen so few scalpers trying to hawk their tickets in years. And I, for one, am glad to see that particular drought. Speaking of weather, though, due to Boston's super rainy, cold, and windy weekend this year, there was a lot less cosplay as one might expect. There will likely be a ton more next year, as PAX East 2025 has already been announced for the weekend of May 8th through 11th in 2025. And this will be the first time an in-person PAX East has been held so late in the year, with it typically being scheduled in March or April. The 2021 event was originally going to be in June, but it was canceled due to the pandemic and replaced with an online version in July of that year. I personally will be glad not to drive through a snowstorm in Western New York to get there next year. No, Mother Nature, that is not a challenge you should accept. Well, that's it for my overview of PAX East 2024. I'll be releasing a series of videos in the coming days to discuss the games I got to test drive on the show floor. Some I didn't get to try out, but I'm still going to look up just because they look really, really cool. And the cool panels I got to attend, and the one I really wanted to get to, but it was so super popular that I couldn't even get in the door. Because the fire marshal won't, well, the enforcers and PAX in general take room occupancy limits very seriously, and there's no such thing as standing room only. You either sit or you not go in. And so that happened to one of the games that I'm really interested about. And I also do a video on it because there's still information on it that I want to talk about because it's important to many things. So you'll see that when I release that video. But that's it for now. Thank you very much for watching. Feel free to like the video, and you can subscribe to this channel to get my videos in your feed. Have a great rest of your day. Bye now.